Okay, this is where one of us has to get their tongue snapped in
I don't think it's gonna
in the clapper.
And action!
You get it? Yeah. Cool.
See, and then that gives you an excuse not to have to do this, to get raced over to the emergency room for stitches or. Okay, well, we're going to start with day jobs. We have to start with day jobs because that's a very important part of this.
All right.
What's your day job?
Well, I work at a coffee company in Santa Cruz. It's a classic. But I work in production, so I don't have to deal with customers.
But you get to drink a lot of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Every day.
That's excellent.
Yeah. What about you?
So everybody walks around with the jitters.
Yes.
And they're gritting their teeth. And then they're waiting for Friday night so they can have a party and have the Coke dealer show up or whatever.
Yeah.
My day job is just to make it through the day every day. I've had quite a few day jobs, all very exciting. Everything that you would expect from a person that's in a band. See, now I've been in a band with a character named Greg Hetson, who at one point the Circle Jerks, that was his full-time job. And then he got the offer to play in Bad Religion, which turned the Circle Jerks into, well, I'll do it whenever I have some spare time.
Classic.
And in these breaks, in these dips, in these valleys, I have worked as a bartender, as a bar back, bussing tables, as a barista. We had a really great job down in Century City. All of us actually got a job through Lucky Lair, our drummer at the time, who he happened to be working for a law firm. And they needed people to come in and stack papers. And we were working on, the case that we were working on was, there are two brothers that own a chain of theaters. And one of the brothers was getting all of the first run, big, ultra mega, multi-million-dollar movies. And the other brother was just getting scraps, getting tossed whatever was left over. And I don't even know what the entire situation was. We were just happy to have this job where at lunchtime we could go into Beverly Hills and get something to eat, and or maybe hit a bar or hit a liquor store, and we could drink on the job, and nobody really cared.
Would you say that's your favorite? That was your favorite day job that you had, or what was your favorite?
It was fun. It was actually fun because there was so much stuff going on. But favorite day job, maybe when I swept the floor in the barber shop on Saturday morning. Yeah,
simple, like really simple. You don't have to do much.
Yeah,
I don't like being asked to do much, to be honest. I think like,
so the guys in your band don't tell you, well, that note that you just hit there you need to bring it down just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean we have those conversations for sure. I've gotten to a point now where, like, in the beginning when we first started like going on our short runs and tours, I was like packing the van myself, and they would all kind of just go off.
Well, the vocalist isn't supposed to do that.
That's not my job.
That's a good drill, though.
Yeah.
That's a good drill.
Now I've made it a point where I'm like, I'm not going to lift a finger as much. I think I deserve.
Let them move it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's nice. It's nice to keep it laid back after putting like so much energy into like a performance, even though it's like there's not a lot of pressure on it necessarily, but I still put a lot of pressure on myself. Do you feel like you put pressure on yourself when you're performing, or like did you when you were starting out?
I don't know if maybe it depends upon the situation. Yeah. Like if you're in a room and you know the show is sold out, there's going to be about 500 people here. We're playing in Phoenix, in Arizona, in the middle of the summer. This room's going to be a steam bath.
Yeah.
You're going to see the sweat dripping off of the walls. So
Prepare.
I better be hydrated.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things that I'm finding now as a senior citizen, in order to do this, I got to have a meal before we play.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, a lot of vocalists, a lot of guys in band. Oh, I'm throwing up. I can't eat before we play. I got to eat 17 hours before we play. Otherwise, I'm going to piss my pants and puke all over myself. And it's like, got to have gas in the tank.
You have to fuel yourself. I've come up with like kind of a self-care routine now so that I feel ready to go. Because honestly, we're performing. We're like athletes, you know?
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Even what I love about your band, Scowl, the length of the songs, trim the flat.
Yeah. I mean, it should be that way. I feel like I don't have like enough attention span to sit through like a long song. And I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate the noisy, long, artistic stuff as well. But I can't even remember that many lyrics. So why would I set myself up for failure?
Is it Sowing Seeds?
Yeah. Yes.
Would that be like your lengthiest song?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think our longest song is on our most recent record. It's called Dead to Me. It's like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. And that one I still forget lyrics to live. And I just hope
Well, that's
nobody
what
notices.
lyrics are for, because you wrote them.
Yeah.
You can do with them whatever you want to do.
Want. Yeah. It's awesome. I don't know. But yeah, it's nice to keep it short and sweet, and that's the kind of music I like, so why wouldn't I make music that I like and just go down that lane? And that's when I first like was getting introduced to like punk rock. It was like these short songs that just slap you across the face, and I fucking loved it. It was awesome. And I don't know, like, what was going through your head when you guys first were writing that stuff, like early on? So I'm talking like Group Sex and Wild in the Streets. Like, what was that experience like writing those? Did you have any predispositioned like expectations, or because it was such a primal time, you know, with the music, you just were you just doing what you wanted?
Well, you just said a primal time.
Yeah.
You take this primal time and you toss it into this blender that's going like this, and all of these things are happening around you.
Yeah.
Everything's happening so fast. Like, we would be in my garage. This would be Group Sex, where I think we had probably 8 or 9 songs written. Everybody's just tossing in their bits and pieces. And at one point, we had a show coming up. Like, we've got 2 weeks before we're going to play our first show. It's like, guys, we have 8 songs. These songs, we would, if we were playing these songs, it would be like 5 or 6 minutes.
That's awesome.
That could be pretty interesting, because I heard all of the stories about the Jesus and Mary chain on their first tour, where they would play 10 minutes with their backs to the crowd.
Yeah.
And they were basically just like, in a weird way, or maybe it was premeditated, they were saying, fuck you, we don't really want to be here, but it's like part of what we do. Or maybe it's like, yeah, we'll play for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And those people, they'll want so much more that the next time we come back, we'll give them 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's all of this stuff going on. So to try to focus on, well, these lyrics are about our government, and these lyrics are about my girlfriend's friend's dog pissing in a cup on a table, and I woke up the next morning and I was still hungover, and I'm looking for a beer, and there's nothing in the refrigerator, and it looks like somebody left a cup of beer on the table, and You know what dog urine smells like or tastes like?
Not taste.
Well, maybe you can have that experience
Yeah.
one of these days.
Yeah.
Because it's very early for you. So,
Yes.
yeah.
We're getting there. I mean, we did have a pretty crazy tour story where we were offered a place and we came in and there was a lot of dog shit everywhere and like one couch. So people definitely had to sleep on the floor. And that was, that roughed me up. I was like, okay, I don't know if I can do this, but I can. It's fine.
It adds to
Yeah.
your character.
Absolutely. I mean,
If you could sleep there, you could sleep anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, did you feel like you had a lot of those like just
Did you ever stop
vile-
at the KOA?
No, we haven't done that. I've
Because you
been
can
wanting to do
shower there.
that. Yeah. There's
and there's
showers.
probably some food there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what were your like gnarliest experiences sleeping out on the road?
Well, this would have been while I was in Black Flag, when I was in Black Flag. Because we were constantly, I was always doing stuff that pissed them off. So they got mad at me, and all of a sudden they're grinding on me, and it's you're this, and you're the reason we're not moving forward, and all of that kind of fun stuff. And I just said, fuck this. And I jumped out of the van and I started walking. I knew where we were staying. We were staying in a basement under a church in San Francisco. And I didn't know the neighborhood was like the last neighborhood in San Francisco, a 5'5", 116-pound white drunk guy walks through there, and I found an abandoned car, and I just went to sleep in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
And the next morning when I walked down the stairs, the guy that was in charge of the church, there were a bunch of people living there. There was actually a couple of bands living there.
Gotcha.
And the guy said, so what happened to you? The guys in your band said you just disappeared. And I told him that, there's an abandoned car about 4 or 5 blocks down the street. And I passed out in the back of the car. And he said, this is one of the worst neighborhoods in San Francisco. So you might want to think about what you do the next time you're angry with your band.
Yeah.
I have found myself awakened by blazing sunlight
Yeah.
after a night of, maybe a case of beer and
Yeah.
some cocaine and whatever other party favors were available. Like waking up with the sun just cooking one side of my face, of course with a hangover and a headache, and having to go to the bathroom, being in the van. Occasionally we would play places where we would be told, you're going to need to have somebody in your van because you're in a part of town that's not really a place you want to be in.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the reason you were able to get the one hotel room for $25 or whatever it was.
That's how you got the shows to happen there, because they wouldn't happen anywhere else, right?
A lot of times you would play in a really happening part of the city,
Gotcha.
but there would be nobody had any space in their paths, or let's just find a cheap hotel room so everybody can bathe.
Yeah.
And we can get back out and get on the road. We had a period where we would always get the room all the way back at the end of the hotel, so we could pull up with 8 guys,
Yeah.
park at the back, and the person behind the desk can't see 8 people piling out when you said, well, there's 2 of us, so we need a double bed. And everybody would race in. It was like, who could be the first one into the
Yeah.
room to pull the mattress off, because we knew that a couple of guys would sleep on the box spring.
Yeah.
We knew a couple of guys would sleep on the mattress itself. But we were out during the middle of winter, and we would be in some place like Chicago or Detroit where it's 5 degrees below
Brutal.
zero. And I always knew that the Motel 6, I don't know if they still have this, but their heater was like a metal strip that ran along the very bottom between the floor and the wall. And I was just going to crank the heater up all the way and lay down on the floor
Yeah.
next to the heat.
Yeah.
Best place in
Yeah.
the room.
You had the setup for sure. I mean, there's those little things you just kind of start to learn, the quirks of being on the road. You know, I'm starting to get that stuff figured out as we go and we take these longer tours, and it's really exciting and I love it. But I'm also like seeing the challenges, and of course, like I have it much easier now because I just think like so much has changed, and there's so many more people involved, young individuals who just like are so willing to open up their homes for you to stay and things like that. So I have it pretty lucky, but you know, it can be challenging at the same time, like kind of experiencing the quirks that nobody tells you about. And I guess I could ask you, like, what would be like some sort of advice, you know, like things that you never really realized would help you out when you started out with touring?
Well, one of the things that you have to understand in your touring process and staying and meeting and doing all of the different
Yeah.
things that you do while you're on tour, that's part of the character
Yeah.
building process.
Oh, yeah.
And you can have people give you advice.
Yeah.
We never got advice.
No.
We would go out with maybe 2 weeks worth of shows booked
Yeah.
and be out for 4 months.
Wow.
Like pulling into a town, we played right next to the University of Tennessee. We played in the students, it was like their deli, party room, pizza shop. And we played for about 50 people. It was exciting, it was
Yeah.
fun, keep the party going. And right after we got through playing, we started asking around, because we would have breaks in the tour where there wouldn't be shows for 3 days, and
Yeah.
it's like, what are we going to do? You know, Tennessee is beautiful, and this is a really nice time of the year, but we're not tourists. We're not out looking for all of the attractions, and so we're asking around. We're curious as to, well, are there any other places we could play? And then somebody that worked in another pizza shop said, well, why don't you come in tomorrow afternoon and play for whoever shows up?
Just that simple.
You know, and then all of a sudden we would be playing a pizza parlor, and there'd be like 30 or 40 people. And then from that show, because one of the people in the crowd happened to be the 14-year-old kid who was with his best friend, who were neighbors. Their parents had left for the weekend. So here we are on Sunday. They said, we're gonna have a party for all of the kids in the neighborhood. It's like, okay. They said, you want to come and play in our garage? So we end up playing in the garage. Of course, there's kids out riding their bikes and skateboarding and trying to fly a kite and, you know, chasing dogs and all sorts of wonderful things like that. And it would be like 20 kids. There would be situations like playing a bar. It's like, okay, here we go. We're going to be playing the 21 and over. It's going to be a bunch of drunks. You know, this one scenario is in Alabama, and I forget what city it was in Alabama, but rednecks abound.
Yeah.
And we got there, for sound check and said to the guy that owns the bar, could we possibly set up and play for the 15 kids out front who can't get in? They're just going to hang out so they can hear what's going on. And he said, sure, why not? So he opens the door, and of course there's like 40 kids.
Wow.
You know, they get on the telephone. You got to come over here because the Circle Jerks are playing. This is before all of the internet stuff and the Xbox and whatever you carry in your top pocket. Yeah. So we play for the kids, and of course there's a couple of drunk rednecks that don't understand what the kids are doing. You know, when they're piling on top of each other and they're jumping up and down and pogoing and, you know, throwing a few elbows here and there. And they think, well, it's their turn. We're going to show the kids, you know, you don't come into the bar where we hang out and do what you do. And so a couple of kids get elbowed and one kid gets punched, and it's like, no, go back and play pool. And they started to go back to the pool hall in the back of the building, and I chased them. Like, don't be fucking with the kids. Don't fuck with them. And our roadie had jumped off the stage. He saw what was happening. He saw that, you know, these guys were going to tie me up into a pretzel and just roll me down the road. So he comes charging up like he's going to get into it with one of the guys, and the first guy stops and throws a blow, and our roadie ducks, and the guy hits me right in the face, and I'm seeing stars and hearing the birds, and oh, my world's been rearranged, and no, is this the emergency room at the hospital? And anyways, they stayed where they were at, and we played some more songs, and the kids had a great time. And then we played for the adults, and there was probably, because it was like a Thursday or Friday night, everybody wanted to drink. So the bar turned into what it would normally be with some punk rock entertainment. But you'll have all of these different experiences, and they could be really horrible, terrible experiences, or they could be amazing experiences. I mean, I had a situation where she looked like a nude model or an exotic dancer, confused me for Axl Rose.
No.
That was a great one.
That's crazy.
You know, if you do it long enough and you get out there and go to all of the places that you're supposed to go as a band, you can have some of these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share of like weird stuff that happens. I think people don't always think before they talk. So I've had like a couple moments where I'll look at someone at a merch table and they're talking to me, and I just have to smile and kind of stick through it. And then, you know, I have to ask them, like, are you gonna buy a t-shirt? Because for me, it's a bit challenging sometimes, because I'm like in this room full of dudes, and I try not to worry or think about that too much, because it's not the point. Like, I like the music, I like the energy. That's why I'm there.
Do you have tinnitus?
You know, sometimes, I get that little ring in my ear.
You haven't. Well, you're young.
Yeah.
I'm 66 years old. I'm experiencing hearing loss.
Oh my gosh.
So a lot of times all you're doing is bobbing your head and just agreeing with everything they say, not even knowing what they're saying.
Yeah, especially when the music's playing, can't hear anything. I just hope for the best. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Thank you. So how would you say that, like, you're from Hermosa, right? Hermosa Beach?
Well, I grew up in Hermosa, but I live 2 blocks from where I was born.
Okay, gotcha. And you, when you were going to punk shows, when you were getting into it, when you were younger, how was the scene? Like, how would you describe the energy and the people who were coming around?
the scene in Hollywood at that time was very cliquish.
Yeah.
It was like, this is our club, and you've not filled out the proper forms to be included in our club, so we're not accepting you at this time. And we loved all of the bands. Being from where we were, we didn't look like any of the people that attended any of these shows.
Yes.
And maybe that was one of the reasons we weren't included.
Yeah.
So we just kept pecking away, chipping away, hanging out, making friends with whoever we could make friends with. And our situation was, Greg Ginn and I, we just hounded Brendan Mullen, who was the guy that created the mask. I mean, if there was one person that would be held responsible and accountable for the early punk rock scene in Southern California, it would be Brendan Mullen. And we would corner him at the mask, Greg and I, and it's like, when are you going to let us play? We did this for probably about half a year.
Jeez.
At one point, he had Dutch, who was the doorman. Dutch, I think, picked me up by the belt loop on the back of my pants and grabbed me by the, because we had long hair. We weren't short-haired dudes. We were like crusty. We weren't smart enough to surf. We were ho-dads and grimmies, and we all looked like Peter Frampton without any of the glam.
Yeah.
And so I think Dutch grabbed me by the back of my hair and the loop of my pants and threw me out into the alleyway behind the mask. Finally, we showed up at a party, and it was very fortunate for us because we had a bunch of friends there. We knew a lot of the people that were there. Chris Desjardins from Slash Magazine and the Flesh Eaters, Fast Freddy, who was from the South Bay, Don Waller was there. Don Waller was in a band called the Imperial Dogs, who was our West Coast version of Iggy and the Stooges.
Yeah.
Kick Boy Face, Claude Bessie, who was the main guy at Slash Magazine, was there. I guess Freddie, normally in those party situations, there was probably about 30 other people in this apartment. The apartment, I think, was about the size of this room that we're in right now. And Freddie, I guess, just ran out of records to play because he would go through people's record collection. There was one scenario where we were upstairs and there was a swimming pool outside the window, and Freddie was fingering through the person's record collection, and each record that he saw that he thought didn't belong there, or was just like, why are you listening to this, or why do you have a Styx album in here? And the window was open and he would just fling it out the window. So there was all of these records floating on the top of the swimming pool. Anyways, Freddie was like the DJ. Freddie ran out of stuff to play, and Chuck Dukowski, our bass player, just happened to have a copy of the Nervous Breakdown EP, and he got down on his knees, he placed it on the turntable, placed the needle on the record, and when it blasted, all of the people that were in the room were like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then they looked at us, and it was kind of like somebody pointing a finger. You weren't supposed to make music like this.
Yeah.
And that's when we were accepted amongst all of the hierarchy of the
Interesting.
LA Hollywood punk scene. We loved all of it. We loved all of the bands. I mean, even the worst bands, even the lower rung bands, we loved them all. It was like, we're also learning that a lot of these people, they're just showing up just to be there. It's like some of them weren't really It gave them something to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people were coming from all of these different places that, okay, well, he's an art student down here at Pasadena College of the Arts or whatever, and there were like fashion designers and artists. So it was a good, not even good, it was a great mix of people. It was just, a lot of them were kind of snotty and snobbish and entitled. And you're not cool because you look that way. So now all of a sudden we're starting to experience some of the rules out of the punk rock book.
Yes.
Like if you got to do this and you can't do that, and you've got to listen to this and you can't listen to that. And it was like, okay. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the early LA, Hollywood, Southern California punk rock scene. What about the scene in, you say you're from Sacramento, but I'm familiar with a lot of the Sacramento scene. But then the guys in your band argue as to, well, are we going to tell everybody we're from Santa Cruz, or are we going to tell everybody we're from San Jose? Yeah. So what are those scenes? What's happening, or what was happening in those scenes?
So I live in Santa Cruz now, and right now the Bay Area or San Jose and Santa Cruz is kind of experiencing this like explosion with hardcore, and there's a lot of young people who are really excited. There's so much energy. It's really, really cool, and there's a lot of like camaraderie and like pride that I haven't necessarily like sensed before. And it's really exciting, and like I don't know. I don't know.
So how big is the scene? Like a couple of thousand people?
Well, that's the thing. The people I know, my like immediate, the people that I know, I'll say hi to at a show or whatever, my friends, it's probably like 50 heads. But we get like 2,000 people, 1,000 people who will come out to like a big show. And it's like, I don't even know you. When a couple years ago, we would have a show in a room that's like a quarter the size, and it'd be all my friends. And that was the most popping thing, you know? And so it is really crazy that it's exploded like this, and like there's all these faces I've never seen before, but it's exciting and it's good. I don't feel intimidated by that at all.
Well, that's good. Yeah. So you're going to be meeting a lot more new people.
Yes, young people.
Yeah.
They're so excited.
That's just part of the growing experience. That's cool. Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
What's the vampire movie?
The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys.
That's Lost Boys.
Santa Cruz is really
territory,
cool.
Yeah.
I moved to Santa Cruz.
Have you experienced any vampires?
I think so. I believe in that stuff. No, just energy vampires. But yeah, Santa Cruz is really cool. There's this, it's just this like touristy surf town, and I moved there 3 years ago, and I mean, it was just this like kind of like creative hub, and I wanted to be involved in something like that. So that's what drew me to it, and I got lucky, and there's just like so many creative individuals that I'm around now, and like people making music and art and taking photos and just like consistently like feeding this like growing like scene. It's really cool. But so when it comes to writing, I was curious, like when you guys were writing Wild in the Streets, did you feel like any pressure to add any like a different blend of like creative influences or anything like that? Like, because I feel like when we're writing for Scowl, sometimes we just throw stuff in there, and if it works, it works.
That's
we don't really,
the blender.
Yeah. You don't like think about it too much, but other people are very calculated.
I personally hate all of the calculation.
Yeah.
You know, that's like record label stuff.
Yes.
That's band management stuff.
Yeah.
you know, we've got to do this and we've got to do that and you got to do this to get to point B. And then once you're at point B, you got to skip all the way over to point Z. And it's like, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
You know, but you don't overthink this. It's not like we're a bunch of surgeons performing open heart surgery or whatever. It's just like, just jump in and do it. And whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
The premeditated, overthinking things, that's not what this is about. This is about like a burst of energy and just like fucking do it. Don't tell me about all of these plans and, you know, just add more frosting on my cake.
Yeah.
I'm a diabetic. I'm not going to eat it anyways.
So what was that like writing process for you guys like?
Well, the writing process for Wild in the Streets was basically the same writing process as it was for Group Sex. See, now we're promoting 2 albums here. Both of them on their 40th anniversary Trust Records special releases. That's the reason why I'm here. And to of course ask you some questions and find out some more information about Scowl. And like I said, the blender, just toss it all in there. Oh, you're listening to Gang of Four, and I'm listening to Cheap Trick, and you're listening to King Crimson, and you're listening to whatever. What's our new AM station is fucking horrible. The oldies station. It's like you want to hear Creedence Clearwater and Steppenwolf and the Supremes. You want to hear the Turtles, and you want to hear the Hollies and the Kinks and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, all of the great bands from the 60s. And now they consider fucking Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, fucking oldies hits. And it's like, I'm not listening. I mean, I'm very open to music, but there's certain places. We heard all of that stuff a zillion times. We don't ever, unless you love it, then more power to you. I don't. So we had these really amazing radio stations. At the beginning of the Circle Jerks, one of the guys had just got through hearing the Monkees, and I had just got through hearing Paul Revere and the Raiders. And consequently, we're in the room, and, well, we need a few more songs here. We have a good handful of songs. We need some more songs. Well, you know, I had just bought an album by a guy named Chris Spedding. K-Rock, which was another one of our stations, FM station, not an AM station, but a FM station, I would listen to while I was doing one of my day jobs. And they would play a couple of songs by a guy named Chris Spedding, who was an amazing British session player. Now, he'd been in a couple of bands, but he played with John Cale and all sorts of really great artists. And one of the songs that that K-Rock was playing was Wild in the Streets. His cover version of a song that was written by a guy that lived in New York, Garland Jeffries. Now, if you listen to Garland Jeffries' version, it feels like you're melting. It feels like you're trying to walk down a street or an avenue in New York, and the humidity is just so heavy, it's like, and there's a big tuba going, boom, 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 you know, and it's like, okay, our version was 65 miles an hour compared to Garland Jeffries' 12 miles an hour version.
Absolutely.
Chris Spedding's version was about 35 miles an hour. And I heard the song, I loved it, and I said, guys, let's cover this song. And I'm a multi-millionaire. I own 6 homes on top of a hill in the Hollywood Hills. See, you guys, you don't know about this. You don't know about my secret side. I'm a poser. I've been lying. I've fooled everybody. I'm a Mormon. I have 20 wives.
Yeah.
I have 100 kids. It's your turn. So now you're in a band.
Yeah.
You're starting to walk. You're no longer crawling. You're going to be. You say you have a new record. And what's the name of the new record?
How Flowers Grow.
Okay.
Or it's newish. It was put out at the end of 2021.
Yeah, well, you had the rug pulled out from underneath
Yeah.
you with the COVID scenario.
That was tough.
Well, it was tough for everybody.
It was a challenge for everyone, and I mean for musicians.
Except for the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
It wasn't tough for them.
Yeah.
And people in high places.
Yeah.
So now you're getting ready to go back out there and start doing it again.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've played some shows.
Yeah.
I've actually watched some of them on YouTube. That's the amazing thing about YouTube.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, YouTube is attached to the internet, and it's like somebody tells you, well, you should listen to this band. So, okay. So you go on YouTube and you start listening to that band, and you're going, well, they're pretty good. Who do they play with? I'm going to listen to some of those bands. Oh, this is their scene. This is really cool. Because I'm addicted to Facebook, which is really a horrible thing because it really is just a horrible thing where everybody's propping up their opinions, and all of a sudden you're in a day you could be told of like 20 new bands, and you go to listen to those 20 bands, and then all of a sudden you're listening to 20 other bands, and then all of a sudden you've spent 6 hours on YouTube, and your brain is spinning unless you're making notes, and you're, look, this band's really cool. I better go check out their LP, or I'm going to go to. I'm not going to say the evil company, but I would say because now we're all kind of sort of maybe hooked into Apple Music.
Yeah.
There are benefits to all of this stuff. With all of the evil shit that comes along with it, there are benefits. Just like Facebook, I've reconnected with my first friend from Hermosa Beach when I was 7.5 years old. He's a lifeguard over in New Zealand. Wow. And we carry on. You get to carry on with a lot of people that you've not talked to in a zillion years. But getting back to the music, I would not know anything about your band. But Mr. Joe Nelson from Trust Records said you got to hear them. You got to listen to them. They're really, really good. And you're going to be shooting a podcast show. And it just made sense. I mean, I wasn't going to come in here and try to stumble my way through this, stumble and fumble and trip and fall. Are you going to catch me when I trip and fall and I'm flat on my face? So I did some homework. And like I said, one of the things that I love about your band is you trim the fat. There's no excess. Some of the influences that I hear, I watch your drummer and he's wearing a Weezer t-shirt, and it's like,
it's
there
every
would
time.
have been a point in time where if you showed up at one of these shows wearing a Weezer shirt, you weren't even going to make it past the fucking parking lot.
No, we all allow him.
See, that's what's great about all of this. It's like, I have musical influences that nobody else wants to know about.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
fine. It's not the end of my world, just like it shouldn't be the end of your world. It's like listen to whatever you want to listen to,
Yeah.
do whatever you want to do, play whatever you want to play. And we're going back to the blender.
Yeah.
You know, everybody has their influences, and that's what makes it all so incredibly fun, and it also makes things interesting. You know, because all of this music has been played before, all of these notes have been played before.
Yeah.
Just put your personality into it, just be yourself, and fuck everybody else.
True. I mean, honestly, I feel like I read stuff online all the time, like people say like, oh, it's been done before. And it's like, well, hasn't it all been done before? I'm just doing what I want. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But I'm going to continue doing this. So you go do what you want, but stay away from what I want, you know? And there's this anxiety or stress behind like wanting to please these like different crowds and like having to kind of like struggle, have that interpersonal struggle where you're like, okay, these are my influences. This is what I want to do with this, but maybe A, B, and C people like aren't gonna like it. And then I just had this click like a while ago where I was like, I don't care. And that's why I did the band. That's kind of where it began. And now it's like I'm getting tested with like different situations as it's grown. But I always go back to this like thought where I'm like, I don't care, I do what I want. And as like ridiculous as it sounds, it's all about simplicity. And like, it's almost like having those impulsive creative moments are like so valuable, you know?
Well, you're also playing to a lot younger crowd.
Yes. Yeah.
So it would be real easy to get caught up in this mentality. Well, what about all of those old people out there?
Yeah.
What about all those old hardcore punk rock people? What about those old metal people? And you know, you're gonna play your music, and you're going to impress. You'll impress some of those people. But you're going out there and you're playing. I watched the one thing, somebody made a comment about Walmart, and it looked like, well, yeah, you're. I think it was in San Jose, and you were playing behind what could have been a Walmart.
Oh yeah.
It's like, hell, fucking yeah, take advantage of it.
What's wrong with that?
You got to be good for something.
Yeah. And I mean, like with that particular show, for example, like all of our friends built that stage. All of our friends made that show happen. There wasn't anyone involved pulling strings, trying to get different bands on it. Like it was all done by ourselves. And it was like insane. It was incredible. It was like the best experience I've ever had at a show. And that just like proved to me, and I feel like anybody else who has like something negative to say about it, that it's like, you don't need, like you're saying, cut off the fat. You don't need all this excess stuff to hone in that energy, you know? It's simple. Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.